Well, it is indeed a very interesting question because we have so many question marks about the lands of today Algeria in ancient times. First of all, usually it is admitted that the Berber population settled down in north-western Africa about 3,000 years before the Christian era. But the study of place names indicate that there was still another group of population with a different language, which completely conventionally we call Zinj, from the Arabic name for Africans. We don't know exactly what kind of population it was, but we discern very strange elements in geographical names in northern Africa that we cannot associate with the Berber language and which definitely are older than that. So that is the open question. If you come to the Berbers, we should remember that the Berbers are close cousins of the Arabs in terms of the language. Anthropologically, it may be completely different, but the language of the Berbers and the language of the Arabs all belong to the same big family of Afro-Asiatic languages. It is a family which is analogous to, let us say, Indo-European languages or Uralo-Altaic languages. It is a quite huge family. However, the origin is undoubtedly the same, and we cannot say in this moment when the division actually took place and in which area it was. It is admitted that probably, as I have told, about 3,000 years before the Christian era, the Berbers settled in northern Africa, because there's evidence coming from historical sources from outside nations and outside records like old Egyptians, Greeks, and others, about such groups of population that can really be traced up to these times, and we can say that they were the ancestors of today Berbers. However, it is still unclear what were the waves of emigration and what were the ways of emigration of the Berber population, which most probably came from the Middle East. After the Berbers came here, they established various local political organisms, but those organisms never survived longer times. They were very delicate, I would say. However, the colonization of the Phoenicians on North African shores and then the colonization of the Greeks have enforced much more complex political structures in northern Africa, which also influenced the Berber population. The Berbers definitely came into contact with the higher civilizations, more developed than their own, and took examples and became acculturated, what can be seen in the language, but also in their social structure and political organisms they were creating afterwards. Then, many centuries later, the north of Africa was occupied by the Roman Empire, and the impact of the Roman Empire was very strong, including the language, which was implanted in northern Africa to great extent. And until probably the 13th, 14th centuries, the remains of the Roman languages, local dialects, were spoken in northern Africa, as is evidenced by the Arab sources, the Arab written sources from those times.
Could you give us examples?
Well, it is most probably in southern, today Tunisia, that sort of population survived. It was referred to by the Arabic authors as Afariqa, and the not very frequent citations from their language indicate that it was really a Romance language that was still spoken by the local population. Also, if we study the toponymy, it means the geographical names of Northern Africa, we do not only find traces of the Roman linguistic implants, but also the traces of the local indigenous creations in the Romance languages that survived until today times, and they are discerned in the present Arabic place names. So that is a very, very curious and very fascinating field of study that has not given final replies as yet, but it is still an open question. How far was the extent of that Romance influence in Northern Africa and their impact on the local population, how much the Romance languages were adopted by the indigenous, still, if they were spoken, as is indicated by the Arab sources, until the 13th, 14th centuries, it means the impact was really very strong. Much more than any Greek influence or Phoenician influence. Then, in the 7th, 8th century, we have a vague of other invaders. It is the Arabs, which completely changed the ethnic situation, but not immediately. First, the Arabs came and incorporated what we call Al-Maghrib now, it means the northwestern part of Africa, into the Caliphate, into the Arab Empire, but the ethnic impact was not very strong. What was the first influence? It was a religion that they brought with them. It was Islam, which survives until today, but the Berbers as such were fighting very strongly against the Arab population, and they felt really oppressed and exterminated by the Arabs. That gave field to many Berber uprisings, to various creations, political organisms that were created in opposition to the Arab state, and that is still a living memory which survives in French and Arabic and Berber literature. In the 11th century, there was another wave of Arab invaders that were the famous Banu Sulaim and Banu Hilal Arab tribes, which came about from Egypt actually, and led to the almost complete Arabization of Northern Africa. However, the Arab culture and the Islamic religion overwhelmingly covered the whole of Northern Africa. Arab language became the only language of cultural communication, political communication, and religious communication. And even those Berbers who wanted to show their own identity, to present their identity to other listeners, to other readers, they had to express it in the terms of Arabic language. So the Arab literature, Arab writing of Northern Africa is not only an Arab creation, it is a creation of both the Arabs and the Berbers alike, who really lived as one ethnic conglomerate for many centuries. Both these ethnic components were occupying the Iberian Peninsula, what is Spain and Portugal now. And not always they were really mixing. We know very well about the conflicts between the Berbers and the Arabs in Al-Andalus. And that situation survives until today. The question is still open and politically unsolved. Then, now comes the 16th century, when the northern Africa, at least partly, is occupied by the Ottoman Empire. The local Arab states or Berber states are conquered by the Ottomans, except for Morocco. In this context, it must be underlined that many authors of Morocco or from Poland and from Iran and underlying that if not those three countries, the Ottoman Empire would probably cover the whole of Central Africa, maybe Central Europe and Eastern Europe, also the whole of the Middle East, and also perhaps the whole of Islamic Africa. But Morocco, Poland and Iran independently put a bar on its expansion. However, Algeria was within the fold of the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottomans organized certain administrative units in northern Algeria. In fact, what is now today southern Algeria was never so much impacted because it was mostly independent. The independent Bedouin tribe, the independent Tuareg, it means also Berber tribes, were living there, were not subject to the political domination of the Ottomans. On the contrary, the whole of northern Algeria was really a part of the Ottoman Empire, together with Tunisia and neighboring Libya. That situation lasted until 1830, until the invasion of France and until the final occupation of Algeria in 1847. The occupation, the time of Ottoman Empire ended, and the French in fact confirmed geographically and topographically what earlier the Ottomans created. It means northern Algeria as we know it today. The territory of Algeria was further extended to the south through the expansion of the French colonialism. So now the territory of Algeria is as it is, but we should remember that when we are speaking about elder times, we should rather speak about territory of present Algeria and not about Algeria in ancient times or Algeria in medieval times, because it simply didn't exist at that time as such as it is today. Now the Algerian population is of definitely mixed origin. It is in a majority Arab-speaking, but even those Arab-speaking tribes and sectors of population are mostly very strongly anthropologically mixed with the earlier Berber population. We cannot really speak about any pure Berbers or pure Arabs in Algeria. Those tribes, those people really intermingled over the centuries, and it can be proved by anthropological searches, by historical documents, by whatever. The Berber and the Arab population in Algeria are in fact inseparable, but how their coexistence will look like in the future is still the open political question. Well, it is definitely the question to which you would be much better placed to reply, but as an observer from outside, I can say that yes, on many occasions I could observe that Algeria is preserving many traditions at a time, and it is not only the Arabic tradition which is preserved. The Algerians, I could see on many occasions, are very proud of the traditions of the Roman, Byzantine, Phoenician culture. They like to speak about it, they like to refer to it. And the Berber tradition is still alive. People are still living in the areas when the language, the Berber language, is almost exclusively spoken. And even if you travel around the country, you will see in how many places the Berber names still exist, even if the local population doesn't speak Arabic at all. Just the example, everyone knows the city of Tilimsan, but even if you ask people in Algeria what does it mean, most of them will not tell you. It is the sources in Berber language, but it is a historical word, and you must go deep into history of the language and into history of the written documents to know it and to understand it. That sort of names occur in many places in Algeria where Berber language is not spoken anymore, but it testifies of the rich and old culture. The same, for example, with Kusantina, which is the Arabic realization, phonetical realization of the earlier name, Roman name, Constantina, and many other examples like that that are very frequent. The heritage of ancient cultures is still within the Algerian minds and Algerian everyday life. Messieurs, dames, vos excellences, spectateurs, étudiants, je suis heureux de vous adresser à cette occasion et je regrette beaucoup de ne pouvoir pas participer dans votre réunion, mais je pense qu'il y a encore une autre occasion que nous nous voyons ensemble une autre fois dans le futur. السادة والسيدات، شكرا جزيلا على هذه الفرصة وأشكركم على حضوركم لهذه المحاضرة، وأتمنى أن أراكم مرة ثانية في أي مكان ما. شكرا جزيلا، السلام عليكم.